Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at some of the new cards that have been added with this expansion. Of course, we have got a rune deck that we have updated. This is the Chimera rune deck that I've quite enjoyed. It's done a fairly good job on ladder and has gave me consistent wins. So dropping a single wind blast and the chain of calling from the previous build, if you have seen my previous video, we have added in a couple of Vesper Witch Hunt. I have considered running 3, but I'm having trouble considering where to drop another card. The next card that I would probably consider dropping down to 2 would probably be very difficult to decide, as I just don't know. Fire Embrace, and that's too valuable. Flame Destroyers, I don't know whether I'd drop that to 2 or not. Insight Mysteria guaranteed, and Spheric Blade, I don't know whether I'd drop that to 1 or not. Very tempting though, as Spheric Blade I don't see a lot of play with, at least from what I've tested so far, because Haven hasn't made a huge comeback recently. But these Vesper Witch Hunters, the Accelerate effect alone is absolutely nuts, giving so much value with that Witch's Cauldron to go along with the Golem Assault and the very nice concentrations. It just combos those two things really nicely, especially Golem Assault. Being able to play Vesper Witch Hunter on 2 and then Golem Assault on 3 for a Golem just gives you so much extra value. While this is only a single card being added to the deck, it really does help it out. It does up the cost quite a bit as they are legendaries, so that's a little bit rough, but it does definitely help. So I would highly recommend running Witch Hunter in most rune decks these days. We'll take a look at a few others in the future, but this one in particular, I definitely recommend running it in because it's just that good. So we're going to get right into it and take a look. So the first game we have here is against Haven. Haven is not obviously the best matchup all the time, but it's definitely a good one as it is a relatively slow deck. Also, considering what's going around right now, Dragon is quite popular, where this deck can run into a bit of trouble with Zoe. Outside of that card, usually you're pretty set up. So as long as you plan out your wards to go against Zoe, usually you're fine. We start off with what I consider probably one of the better hands you could possibly get. Having a Fates and a Giant Chimera and a good turn 1 into a turn 2, turn 3 play always works out pretty favourably, especially when you get Wind Blast off the top. Of course, a lot of these cards do take advantage of the fact that you are spell boosting and wasting a lot of low cost cards to do not so much in the early game. So we get the Consecration, which is a little bit better than playing the Fates hand there. The Concentration just does the same amount of draw at the moment, so we may as well take advantage of it in that case. And of course, White Diamond, that's pretty stock standard. We do have the Seraphic Blade, which is going to do a wonderful job at removing this Summit Temple early, which means we don't have to worry about it too much, as most Haven decks these days tend to run 1, because most of them are some form of hybrid with Tenko, so you don't want to pollute your deck too much. So if we remove that 1 Summit, we have a pretty decent chance. We end up with another Giant Chimera and are boosting absolutely out of control at this point, giving us a super dense amount of cards played. I mean, we've already got our Chimera up to 9, it's going to go to 10, and we're only on turn 5, meaning we actually have 13 total damage right there. Our opponent's not really playing too much. Even if they had have went for something like Tenko, we still would have been reasonably fine. So they get the decent removal, so it does leave things up in the air, as I do want to remove as much of this as I can. The top deck on the Magic Missiles is actually fairly decent. I probably could have done this in a bit of a different order, but I was actually trying to aim for the Absolute Zero Blade, then decided to change my mind at the last minute, going for the Wind Blast play instead. Also decided to actually take out the Snow White, as I don't deem it too much of an actual threat. Most of this deck is pretty uninteractive to your opponent for the most part when it comes to what they can do to you, but what you can do to them is pretty consistent. My opponent not really doing too much, just going for the Holy Priest. Even with a perfect lineup, wouldn't have helped them out too much. As we really can just block things down pretty well. So Rune and Absolute Zero Blade give us a decent draw engine, along with a decent spell boost. Really no issue at all running those cards. Considering we're very close to turn 8 now, and we're going to have some massive spell boosting turn, we're actually relatively safe. Vesper's just great all round, honestly. It's one of my most enjoyed cards from the mini expansion so far. Right up there with the Portal Gold, which we will be checking out in the next video, so stay tuned for that one. So I get to use the Seraphic Blade just to kind of bring it down so that I can then use quite a nice combination of cards to really get the maximum possible spell boost out of this turn. Our Chimera's now being absolutely massive. Unfortunately, the opponent does concede before dropping my Chimeras, but definitely worthwhile. You can definitely see how much this has helped the deck if you've watched my last video. I've struggled a lot with getting these Chimeras up over 20 consistently, but as soon as I made those couple of small changes, now the Chimeras seem very easy to boost up. It has helped that my draw has been fairly decent. You can brick fairly easily and not get your Chimeras, but even in a situation like that, usually your other cards do help support you quite a bit. So they do have the early Zoe, which is a little disappointing, as that's one of the more problematic cards that you don't want to have to deal with, so the later that you see that card go back into the deck, the better. And they also have a very consistent turn 2 ramp, so at least we have a okay 1 and 2, which gives us some decent spell boosting. Even if it is only a couple of cards that we can take advantage of. And really don't have much more than Absolute Zero Blade here, which is a bit disappointing, but it's okay. I'll accept it. My fate's pretty much tied up in those couple of cards. So again, ramping quite consistently. It's a little bit of a worry for us, but the insight, that's one I'll accept there. And we just go for the Golem Assault to get it out early. Also, the Evo on the Clay Golem, it does allow us to go face for 4 extra damage, so that does consistently boost them down, meaning that the cards that we need don't have to spell boosted quite as far. Plus it baits a little bit of their damage out early, so why not? Turn 5 though, not really sure exactly where to go with this turn, honestly. Just don't really feel much going. We do have a really good Fate's Hand set up though with these Fiery Embraces, so that's not too concerning. This Poseidon, I've now come to the conclusion Poseidon seems to work really well in Ramp Dragon as well. I was thinking it was going to be good in PDK, but it seems like Ramp Dragon's kind of adopted it, as of playing right now, Ramp Dragon's been exceptionally popular. I do go for the Mystic Seer. With the Evo, it does drop the Fiery Embrace and Fate's Hand down to 0, which is a pretty perfect setup for us, because that allows us to remove the 7/6, along with get some consistent draws off. Plus it gets our early spell booster down, which is what we really want for this deck. As our Chimera already is at a really decent 15. It's not an exceptional number, but it's very respectable for a Chimera turn. These White Frosts are a little troublesome, as we do have to deal with them. Fate's Hand though does let us go for some decent draws, giving us some options, which is what we want. We do go for a Seraphic Blade. Double Seraphic Blade. That deals with those 1/3s. Does mean I don't get to play Vespers though. Vespers are a little more clunky in the later game, as they do want to trigger their 4-drop effect more so than their 2-drop, which is a little bit more of a disadvantage. Again, we get a decent chance to use these cards, which is what I want. So a little bit more damage to the face, a Fiery Embrace to get rid of this Irons, and really not too much trouble outside of that. So we currently have a spell boost of 24, which gives us 27 total Giant Chimera damage next turn. Zoe though, as you can see, being the bane of our existence, comes down to really block out any potential lethal that we could have. Really disappointed in that one, as Zoe was quite an annoying card to have to deal with. I do fortunately draw Snowman King, which allows me to use the Wind Blast and the Snowman King as kind of a decent ward card. I don't think one ward would have been enough, but double ward definitely is going to work in our favour. And since we did have an Evo point left over, using Snowman King to deal that potential damage to the Zoe so we don't have to deal with it. Now our second Zoe isn't going to do much, as it doesn't negate the ward. And the Frenzied Drake also not going to be quite enough to even clear this 7-1. Luckily they didn't even have another Zoe set up, so again, we didn't get to play our Chimera, but it was right there. You could see it was going to be a guaranteed lethal anyway, so not bad. So as you can see with this video, this deck has become a lot more consistent. I feel like the Vespers, I wasn't expecting them to make a huge difference, but have done so in adding them to the deck. I don't know whether it was just dropping the Wind Blast down to 2 and removing the Chain of Calling that helped up the consistency as well, but the Vesper has definitely done quite an amazing job. While she isn't a great follower card for this deck, just as an Accelerate 2, she does her work and does it well. I've also really enjoyed the Mystic Seer as a one-of. It's always helped support my deck quite well here and done a really good job. Of course, the original idea for this deck comes from Mr. Mister, which isn't surprising, but it is a very nice Chimera deck. I'm going to be very disappointed when Starforged Legend eventually rotates and Chimera is removed, and Spell Boost will be dropping down after that unless we get some new cards in the future expansion. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe. You'll find the deck list in the description below, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.